Hey, everybody. Welcome back once again. We're live here on ProLine TV. Marc Lawrence, as we go against the spread with our cast of experts on the show as we do each and every week. With that, I want to welcome in those experts. First of all, Jim Feist, the legend himself from Las Vegas. Jim, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm glad to hear that. Also from Las Vegas, from TheLogicalApproach.com, Andy Iskoe. Andy, how's everything for you in Las Vegas?
Everything is going nicely, and I keep saying that this week, instead of playing the theme song for the 49ers, they should play the theme from MASH.
MASH. Watch and see what that MASH unit does tonight. We'll talk about that a little bit here. Greg DePalma, producer extraordinaire from Prime Sports Network. How's your week going this week?
So far, so good, because I'm undefeated. There's no games yet. So it's always good to be undefeated. You have all the research. You're all ready to go. You're all confident. Confidence is high. Starting tomorrow. Starting actually, what is it? What's today? Thursday? Tonight.
Thursday.
We got the first game tonight. Yes.
There is a game.
Confidence is high, and then they kick off.
Yeah, and then everything changes. Yes, exactly. Then you go, what happened to all that information I had that I thought was good?
Well, it was going in anyway, Greg. You know,
I know we have an agenda, a script, and we follow. But Greg, you said something before the show started. I think you should say something about it, about what you did.
Well, Andy actually kind of agreed without even realizing I had said that, which is the fact that I usually don't study injuries until later, a few weeks into the season, because come on, it's not going to be that much of a difference the first few weeks of the season. I don't have time to look at injuries. And then I realized, I got to take a look at the injury report, all these injuries going on. So I looked at the entire injury report. I looked at all the players. I looked at all the teams, and I have never seen this many injuries before in my life.
And that was just volume 1.
Yeah, it is you can't wager on NFL games today without looking at the injury reports. Take a look at the Arizona Cardinals running back situation with top 2 running backs out. I believe Kyler Murray now leads the team about 5.9 yards per carry. I think 38 carries, something like 225. The remaining 4 guys listed in the stats have carried a total of 8 times this year.
Oh my.
Yeah, they're going to go to
1 and 2 running backs.
Yeah, Michael Carter is going to end up starting for them. He'll be like the first and second down back. That Del Mercado guy was still going to remain in that passing role, the third down role. So while it's a downgrade for sure, because he wasn't even on the active roster yet this season, he's still a capable back. So I would just say this, just to throw this in there for that. If you're thinking of taking Arizona or thinking of not taking them because of the running back injuries, I would tell you to just nix that suggestion, because they'll be fine with Michael Carter. They're playing the Tennessee Titans, for crying out loud.
The Tennessee Titans, who, by the way, their margin of defeat has grown significantly week by week by week.
Mark, you and I have been around doing this for 6 decades.
Yes.
What is the problem? What is going on?
That is a great question, Jim. I was asking myself just this morning when I was talking to a friend of mine in Philadelphia that I've never seen so many injuries this early in the National Football League season. We're just out of the month of September, and we've seen so many backup quarterbacks starting games. We've got so many injuries. We've got so many players that are playing from the practice squad at this point of the season here. If I'm Roger Goodell, I have to take a long, hard look at why is all this going on. I don't know if it has to do with
I'd say one of the things would be, how about playing 4 days after you've just been beating your body up on Sundays and you're coming back on Thursday nights? They got to do something about that.
How about the preseason and no practice and all the rules that the CBA forced upon the league, the union? The CBA is the union. Is that all? I mean, some of it has to be contributed to that.
Well, Jim, it's a great point. It's just like an athlete playing in the Olympics. How well would he perform in the Olympics if he didn't have time to get ready for the Olympics?
Why do racehorses go once a month?
Yeah, there's a reason. Okay,
but they need the time to heal. You start the healing process on Sunday night, Monday morning, then you're out there practicing on Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and then if you're playing on Thursday, you haven't even maybe 50% of what you had on Sunday hasn't even healed yet, and now you're going to start all over again, and it's going to be even worse.
It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Here, before we get into this, guys, I want to share my I'm just saying segment portion of the show here, only because I just wrapped up the Midweek Alert statistical newsletter, which is just crammed with all kinds of great stats. We can look at the stats and maybe dismiss ourselves from the injuries at this stage of the football season. But here's an interesting situation here. In the National Football League so far this season, we have seen a total of 12 teams, 6 on one side, 6 on the other side, that have 6 of them have won the yardage in every game they've played. 6 of them have lost the yardage in every game they've played. Of the 6 that have lost the yardage in every game they played, 1 of them is undefeated.
Philadelphia.
I'm sorry?
Philadelphia.
Well,
I believe.
You spoiled the surprise,
Oh.
Andy. That's okay.
Well, it's just a question of whether it's a surprise now or a surprise later. But it's remarkable because I was reading some articles about that just last night about the fact that the way they've changed the offense and the defense, it's sort of game planned towards not necessarily the accumulation of statistics, but rather just take as much time off the clock as you can. That's why we haven't seen them pass as much this year, because they want to make sure that they wear down the opposing defense.
Actually spoken out and are complaining they're not getting the ball.
AJ, yeah.
Undefeated and not enough, I guess. The surprising thing to me, guys, is the guys that have won the total yards every game this year. There's a guy on there that perhaps maybe a lot of people, if you're sitting in a bar, would tell them the name of the team, would not get it. You'd win that bar bet. But it's the Atlanta Falcons, who have really performed well this season, at least on the playing field. And I think they're a sleeper team to watch.
I would not have guessed that.
Interestingly, their defensive numbers are very, very good.
Yes, on
but
top of
their overall play is look at the Cleveland Browns, number 1 in total defense, and I think they're like 28th or 29th in points allowed because of big plays against them, their negative turnover rate, etc. So some of these statistics that we've relied on for many years as indicators are not necessarily as true right now. There's a little bit more randomness in what's going on, and I think that a lot of the coaching staffs around the league are slow to adjust to some of those changes, like the tush push. People complain about it. Well, A, learn how to stop it, or B, learn why it's working for Philadelphia. Break down the Eagles film, and you can find out what it is. Leverage your stance, maybe your spacing. All of that has to do with it. Just because you can't deal with it, you don't outlaw it. You try to work it. And I said before that they're probably going to end up having to pass some sort of rule change that'll have to do with the distance between the players on the offensive line, so the refs can have a better look at any pre-snap movements. And that's how they will outlaw the tush push. But while it's still there, you got to deal with it.
Well, guys, let's look at the 3 games we've got on tap to break down in the National Football League this week. We're going to have 2 games and then a featured game. One of our first games on tap is the Tampa Bay Bucks traveling to Seattle in a matchup of 2 teams that I don't want to say are surprisingly good, but Tampa we've come to learn to expect. They're all about winning in Tampa, and it started maybe even a little bit right there or after when Tom Brady left, but they've continued to keep the ball moving forward, the Tampa Bay Bucks have. And they're going to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Jim, what do you see happens here? This looks like a pair of football teams that could well be in the playoffs by season's end.
I think they both are in the playoffs. To me, they're almost equal. Different, but equal. Now, the only thing that I could say about the injury issues, Tampa Bay they have more injuries, and they have suffered through that. Now, they almost came back and got in the game with Philadelphia last week, even after giving up that blocked kick for a touchdown early in the game. But Baker Mayfield has been incredible. And now that their offensive line is getting a little healthier, and I know that Greg stays on top of that pretty well, and he probably could fill in the blanks on this. To me, when I look at this game, it seems like they're almost like identical. I think if they played 10 times, you're going to have 5 wins and 5 losses.
I agree.
That much alike. But this is a cross-country trip. Tampa Bay has been more injured. And then they lost Evans on top of that because 3 weeks ago, they played a game with 3 offensive linemen out, for God's sake. I mean, that's what the Chargers are doing now, playing with 3 offensive linemen out. So, I mean, these kind of things makes it so much more difficult to analyze these games. under normal circumstances, I would be all over Tampa from the standpoint that how the hell you're not going to give the 3.5, maybe even buy a 4. You can, if you can get a big enough number on the 3.5, you can get a 4 very cheaply. And that's what I would do with it. But at this point, I'm just going to look at it and say, I like the offensive power of both teams. They're going to both move the ball. They're not going to sit on it unless you get a rainstorm in Seattle. I like it to go over.
Jim's on the over in this football game. Andy, what do you see happens here between these two potential playoff teams?
Well, I could see the over as well, but perhaps also for a different reason because of the offensive line issues and the running back issues with Tampa Bay. I think Bucky is doubtful, if he hasn't already been ruled out this week, that we could see some turnovers from Tampa Bay, which would lead to more scoring opportunities for Seattle. I also wanted to play, before taking a look at the midweek injury report, I also wanted to play Tampa Bay. In fact, I was looking to play Tampa Bay on the money line because they have been playing just so well home and away that they're capable of beating a Seattle team, which I think has surprised a lot of people this year with Sam Darnold coming over from Minnesota. But again, he proved himself last year. And people still say, yeah, but look about those games late in the season against Detroit and in the playoffs. Hey, that was after 15 or 16 games had taken the toll on Sam Darnold, his receivers, etc. He was very sharp throughout the season, and I think he's carried that momentum from the majority of last year over to Seattle. So I do think this game could be a high-scoring game because I do like both quarterbacks.
High-scoring football game. 2 votes for the high-scoring in the football game. Greg DePalma, you going over, under, or aside in the game?
Oh, I'm definitely going with the number. I'm not a total guy because if I can't be an expert like Vic, I can't do it. So anyway, I like Tampa Bay, just like what Jim said. Getting 3.5 to 4 points is really all I'm going to need to be convinced to take that side of Tampa Bay, because that means in a game that could very well be close, like a lot of games are in the NFL, that can go down to the last minute, that can go down to a field goal. I feel a lot better with 4 points than the other side. If I was taking Seattle, I do what Jim has taught me very well, and that is I would definitely take the money line and stay away from those 3.5 points. A couple of things of note, and the reason why I also like Tampa Bay is because Baker Mayfield, since he's been with the Bucs, has been really, really good in this spot. He has covered 11 of 14 times as a road dog. As the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Bucs, he's 1-0 in that spot already this year. And for a Playbook special, and of course, you want to know what that is. That's what this is. This is the Playbook magazine. I always like to come out with trends that are a little bit not as easy as to just come off the mouth like a road dog, but a Playbook special, and it's not that crazy. The Bucs have covered 8 straight as non-division road dogs of 3 or more. So this is a really good spot for the Bucs as far as the line is concerned. And you were right, Jim. Tampa Bay has more injuries than Seattle. I don't think there's any question about it. Here's their injury list right now, just so you could take a look at it. Oh boy. So let's see. This is where are we? Well, this is all the way to the top.
We have to extend some time to the show here, Greg, with these injury lists.
Yeah, look at this. There's Dean.
My God.
Dean may not play. Evans is out. Gaines looks like he may not play. Godwin did come back. Godicke's out of obviously. Bucky Irving. There's no way he's going to play. He was on crutches and a walking boot yesterday. I don't know how he's going to play. Of course, the other guys are already out, as we've talked about, and a few other players. Tristan Wirfs is back. David Walker's out. So there's a lot more injuries, even though you do. Andy mentioned Arizona's injuries. Look at all of Arizona's injuries. Look at this. But the good thing with Arizona, I don't know why I'm talking about Arizona.
Andy was right in the beginning. Just play the MASH theme song.
Yeah. But Seattle does
the
not
whole league. That should replace the NFL. That should do the theme from MASH now. Introduce all these pregame shows.
And eventually the national anthem. Yes.
Wow.
So anyway, the fact is that yes, Seattle is not as injury prone as Tampa Bay. But I'm not. Look, I've got Baker Mayfield. I have Tristan Wirfs. I think Rachaad White is a capable number 2 to fill in for Bucky Irving for a game. Godwin, week 2 after the injury, he'll be better. And the defense, even though they've lost some real key pass rushers, there's still Levante David, there's still Antoine Winfield. So they have enough players that I'm not really too worried about taking the 3.5.
I will mention that the Westgate puts out those advanced lines the Tuesday before the games of the week preceding the advanced line game. So last Tuesday, the 23rd, they put out this game with Seattle -1.5 at home against Tampa. It got bet up to 2, then back down to 1.5 when they took the game off the board on Sunday. When they reposted it Sunday night after all the activity during the day, it was actually reposted at Seattle 2.5, and of course now it's gone up to 3.5. It may have briefly hit 4 at some point, but I would imagine we'll probably see it when these injury reports are more finalized. I wouldn't be surprised if this game closes 4.
We seem to have that each week with Tampa Bay, talking about injuries every week they play, and they don't get any better. They seem to get worse as the season goes on, but yet they still keep winning football games. It's kind of a mystery. And that could not only go to coaching, but also Baker Mayfield and his desire to win football games. We have 2 votes to the over here so far. Greg likes Tampa Bay, and I'll make it 2 for 2 on Tampa Bay myself here as well.
Mark, I got to say something to you, Mark.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
You knew Baker Mayfield would be great when Cleveland cut him.
That's why I don't get a lot of sleep at night, Jim.
That's a private joke between Mark and I.
That's okay.
Exactly.
I saw that picture of the jersey that they have now with like 40 different starting quarterbacks since like Bernie Kosar or something that the Browns have been through.
Oh my God,
and it has to be an extra large shirt, of course, to fit all those names.
I even had him on the front cover of our Playbook magazine, preview magazine, when he came out and joined the Cleveland Browns out of college as the #1 pick of the draft.
Right.
That's how sort of geeked up.
He is banged up. He's on the injury report as well this week, isn't he?
Yeah, he was on the injury report last week as well,
Yeah.
but he'll be fine. He's okay. I think it has something to do with his hand, something like that.
He's a warrior, man. I'll tell you, that guy, he'll play hurt. He doesn't one leg. That's all he needs.
And by the way, if I were to play a side, and I still haven't decided, the only side I would play in the game would be Tampa Bay. They're that good.
The games when he was with Cleveland and he was banged up there as well, Jim.
Yeah.
And he was basically playing with one arm, just one arm and one leg. It didn't stop him. You couldn't take the kid out of the lineup.
He's ferocious. That's for
yes,
sure.
He is.
And the teammates feed off that kind of energy. Here's a guy willing to sacrifice himself so much, take the hard hits from guys who are 100 pounds heavier than he is. That rubs off on your teammates, and perhaps that's why it explains why a place like Tampa Bay has been so successful. And maybe it started with the impact that Brady had in his winning attitude. This team's won 4 straight division titles and 5 straight 2-0 starts.
I think you're right. I think so.
Well, one thing Tampa brings into the game, guy, that I like is the better offense and the better defense statistically in the football game. And they just held Philadelphia to a season-low 200 yards in their last football game. So there's nothing flukish at all about this Tampa Bay defense. We know we're going to get blood and guts out of the offense. I'm going to look for them to make it 6 wins in the last 7 games in this series against Seattle here. I like Tampa plus the points here as well.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You mentioned before about teams that win in the stats.
Yes.
Is Tampa one of those?
Tampa is a team that I will look at right here as we hear. And Tampa has won the stats 3 of their 4 football games.
Okay.
They actually were out-yarded by Atlanta. It's the only team to out-yard them, that surprise team that I told you about earlier.
That was the game where Koo missed the field goal or the tying score. Yeah.
At the end of the game. Yeah, that was after I think Tampa missed the extra point that kept it at 3 instead of 4.
Correct.
The former
should have been
place
24-20.
right.
Yeah.
Who eventually lost his job. Okay, guys, we got another big game on tap here Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs, who appear to be back on the winning track, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who want to impose upon everybody that they're ready for the playoffs this year as well.
Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Yes, Monday Night Football on top of it. So there'll be a lot of eyes on this game. Which side of this football game, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Jim, are you taking a look at?
Well, I do think Kansas City's back. I think they have. When I watched the game, I wasn't looking for, I was looking for how they are blending together, because it looked to me in the first few games that they played that they were totally out of sync, that nothing seemed to mesh offensively. And last week, even though they were playing the Ravens and the Ravens had their difficulties, and they still do, they looked like they synced. And Worthy coming back, I think, really helped, because Mahomes needs to have places to go with the ball. And Rice will be coming back. But, of course, with the the dislocated shoulders that Worthy suffers, and I've had one of those, they do tend to come back out and cause problems unless you have it reduced and wired shut, which is what you need to do. It's a surgery that has to take place. But in this game, I can't lay 3.5 or 3 on the road. This is a very tough game. I don't know that Jacksonville is real. Yeah, they beat up a San Francisco team last week that has half their or 90% of their players on the injured reserve list. And I've never been a fan of Lawrence. After he came out of college, he was supposed to be the guy, but he never really developed. You got a new head coach that's got to blend together as well. I think it's a great spot for Jacksonville to really show themselves. But to me, Kansas City is going to win this game. And in this kind of a point spread, you know what I do with low point spreads. I'm a money line player on low point spread favorites. I got Kansas City on the money line.
Jim's going to take the money line route in this football game and play the Kansas City Chiefs minus the money in this football game. Andy, where are you going here in this Monday Night Football contest? It's intriguing, I think, interesting to say the least.
It really is. And if you look at a lot of the basic stats, these teams are very, very similar. Look at points scored, 24.3 versus 24.0. Look at points allowed, 19.0, 18.0. Total yards, offense, 345 to 355. Total yards defense, 321 to 329. I mean, that's basically, you talk about a statistically pick 'em game. This would certainly qualify. Now, if I heard this stat correctly, going into last year, Jacksonville, I think they forced only 9 turnovers all season. And last week, they had a turnover that gave them already 10 for this season. That defense has been significantly improved. Yeah, you always have to consider the quality of the competition that they faced. I'm not ready to conclude that Kansas City is back, but I have to be encouraged by what I've seen, especially when you carry over the momentum from that Sunday night game against the Giants, which was 9-6 in the fourth quarter before they scored some late touchdowns to make it, I think, 22-6, I think, was the final. So there is the potential there, but we saw last year Kansas City's inability to close out games with leads. I still go back to the first game of the season with the little toe for the Ravens that could have turned a Kansas City opening day win into an opening day loss, and we saw that throughout the season. So I'm inclined to take Jacksonville plus the points in this game. I think they are a much improved team. I think they've shown that already. I think they've responded well to the new head coach, and obviously the defense has shown some improvement. By if you're benefiting from all those turnovers, it generally tells me that they're being much more physical than they've been in the past. Maybe hitting a little bit longer, and maybe tackling a little bit better than they have in the past. And tackling, of course, very often is a matter of technique. They teach you how to attack runners coming at different angles and different where the ball is positioned, where the legs are positioned, etc. And I think we've seen that out of Jacksonville. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to play it, although I do think, at least in some of the contests here in town, at the plus 3.5, it'll be on at least one of the cards.
Well, according to our midweek alert, it appears to me, Greg, that Kansas City has yet to turn the football over this year, which is the sign of a good football team, obviously. They don't beat themselves in that sense. They've come away a little bit from their one-score games that we're so used to seeing them play, and the last 2 have been wins well beyond 1 scores. But there's an issue in the game that I'm going to address. Before I do that, who do you like?
By the way, I do show that they did have I think Mahomes had an interception in the loss to Philly.
Oh, yeah, in the Philadelphia loss?
Yeah, that's the only one I see.
You're right, Andy. I just picked that up. Good correction. So who are we going to look at in this game, Greg? The Chiefs or the Jaguars?
Well, what scares me about just jumping right on the Chiefs again is the fact that they're a favorite. And I know that they already covered with the Giants, but again, that's the Giants. They're the favorite here against a good team on the road. And so until they start covering, and look, even if I just looked at the book and wanted to go back the last 4 years. So since 2020, including the 2 favorite roles this year, the Chiefs are 34, 36-2 as a favorite. That's basically, it's telling you, yeah, 1 week they cover, 1 week they don't. I mean, you can't get any traction with this team as a favorite. So sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. I kind of agree with Andy. If I'm going to take the game, I'm probably going to take the 3.5, 4. But I'd probably rather figure out a way, since it's Monday night. I'm going to try to, I would want to figure, maybe I'll do this myself, because I kind of think the Chiefs will figure out a way to win, is that I'll try to get like an upset pick, some team that's 2-1 on the money line, parlay that with the Chiefs at -175. That's probably what I'll try to do.
But by the way, Mark, before you give us your comments on this game, have you done some research over the last, say, 5, 6, 7 years, how Kansas City does the week following a big game, especially one that they've won? And you have to say that last week's game, despite their 1-3 record now, Baltimore's still considered one of the top teams, and we'll see what happens. And we'll talk. I don't know if we're going to talk about that game, but just take a look at who Baltimore's played the first 4 games, and I would challenge any other team to do all that much better than the Ravens have done in going 1-3, facing that schedule that they faced. But any data on how the Chiefs have done under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, coming off of what would normally be considered a potential letdown spot given the opponent that they just played and beat?
Well, the problem there, Andy, is identifying a big game. That's sort of up for argument.
Well, last year, we're talking the last few years, probably the first place teams in the other divisions, like, for example, the Baltimores, perhaps the Bills, for example, and maybe to a lesser extent, I guess Steelers have been okay, the Bengals in recent years.
Well, what I do know is after they battle Baltimore, which is usually fierce battles, Kansas City is 1-10 to the spread the next game after taking on Baltimore. Usually physical games, and it's probably part of what you're alluding to here. How does Kansas City perform in games after prime time or important type football games? I can't label prime time, but maybe there's a formula that I can devise that would identify those types of games with win percentages and so forth and whatnot. But
Mark, that 1-10 stat is pretty incredible.
Yeah, after Baltimore.
And by the way,
problem though is that they're not the same Baltimore. And
No.
you said a physical game. Well, Tony Lombardi, I'm going to interview him at 4:00. He wrote an article covering the team for Russell Street
Great
Report.
article, by the way. Thank you for sending, Greg.
You're welcome. And so basically what he said is this isn't the same Ravens team. They don't play physical anymore. They got issues on both sides of the ball, most likely coaching, and I completely agree with that. So I wouldn't look at it as, because again, those 11 games, it would all depend on exactly, because I hear what you're saying, but I wouldn't look at it as a physical next game, sort of like Detroit game for any, you play the Detroit Lions, any next game is going to be coming down from a physical game nowadays. That's just not the case with the Ravens anymore.
Well, the thing with the Ravens, with the Chiefs, is that record may be partially due to the tax you're paying in the point spread, because they are the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've been to all those Super Bowls and had all that success, winning 6 or 7 or 8 straight division titles. So whereas this game might normally have been maybe a 1.5 or a 2 based upon current season performance of both of these teams, now it's over 3 because you're paying for Kansas City, the name in Kansas City. Now, the other thing I'd point out about this game, Mark, and you probably will have some comment on it, I don't know, but this might be Jacksonville's only nationally televised game of the season.
Oh, and speaking about that, they're 1-6 in their last 7 Monday night games. And Andy
Jacksonville?
Yes, and Andy is correct. It is the only primetime game of the season for the Jags, who have not played well on Monday Night Football lately.
That's by the way, the question I would have, because Jacksonville's been a good and a bad team. Of those 7 occurrences, how many of them were when they were bad teams versus the rare seasons where they were good? And I use this analogy all the time. It's the old thing. Well, Tampa Bay's 1-37 when the temperature's below 36 degrees, when they used to go up to Green Bay as division rivals. Well, Tampa Bay was like 1-37 against in many of their 38. And that's a bit extreme, but the point is, it's got to be taken within context where, 1-36, or let's say they're 5-32, whatever. That has to be taken within the context of how bad were they in the games when the temperature was above. And I'd say their record wasn't that much better than when they were a lousy football team.
Well, Jacksonville will have a primetime game when they go to London in 2 weeks to take on the Rams. They'll have the spotlight.
That'll be London's primetime game.
Yeah, London's.
It'll be 6:30 here and 9:30 where you're at.
Yeah, exactly.
Mark, what do you think about this game? I think you probably have a beat on this.
Yeah, I have a pretty good feeling about the football game. I don't think Kansas City's completely back yet. I know having Xavier Worthy has really helped Patrick Mahomes out a lot. He needed some desperation help at the wide receiver position, and that's good for him and good for the team. What I'm concerned about here, though, is what works forever in the National Football League, and people can poo-poo this till the cows come home. The bottom line is it works year after year after year, and it's the defending Super Bowl losing teams that find themselves as road favorites in a non-division game the following year. That's the role that Kansas City's in this particular game. And if they happen to take on an opponent that has a winning record, in the 18 times it's happened, they've only lost to the spread 3 times, or only won to the spread 3 times. Those defending Super Bowl losers have won only 3 of 18 games to the spread in a role that they'll be in this particular game.
Well, there goes my money line play on Kansas City.
Well, my only thought here, and it probably isn't in the database because it hasn't occurred, how often was Kansas City with this kind of record coming in over the last 6 or 7 years in that situation? It's an early, it is, and obviously what you say makes a great deal of sense, Mark. It's I would want to know how many of those are early season games, say games 1 through 6, versus later in the season where they're going up against a non-division team that we know has established itself as a good team because they have a winning record.
Well, you can attribute all of this, Andy, to the fact that look at their record. They are a Super Bowl loser who is struggling this season, and hence they're 2-2. Is that a surprise?
Now, did you say a non-division opponent?
Yes.
Taking on a non-division.
So that could be an interconference opponent, but it could also be a fellow team in the AFC outside of the AFC West who's looking to take down the guys who won the conference last year too.
I think what it generally says is they're taking on an opponent that they're not all geeked up for, it, that being a division opponent, where they're maybe not going to give or find that 100% max effort that they usually give. That's probably what plays into all those numbers. But I'm just still not buying into Kansas City here just yet. You knew that when they opened up 0-1, they were not going to be 0-3 or 0-4. It was going to turn around for them. And they are winning games the way they're supposed to. They're winning them on the field and in the yards. If they can get out of this football game with a win, a cover, and a stat win, then perhaps I'll open the door to Kansas City and temper my Super Bowl loser enthusiasm playing against this football team. But until it happens, I'm going to play Jacksonville in this football game. Well, that's our 3 football games that we've got on tap here, but we've got a bigger game on tap, I feel, maybe not as big as our Monday Night Football game, who knows? But I think the biggest game on tap this week is Denver taking on Philadelphia, the Eagles, in Philadelphia this particular weekend. 2 very probable playoff football teams here this week. Jim, how do you see the Broncos and the Eagles faring out on Sunday?
Well, we've talked a little bit about Philadelphia not playing up to what expectations are, and they're in the stats, they haven't been playing that great, and their passing game has been efficient, and even the wide receivers, and they have some really talented wide receivers, but they don't get them the ball, and they trying to run the ball like they did last year, and they were dominant on the ground a year ago. But that's not happening this year. They're not getting that 5-6 yards. They're getting 2 yards, 2.5 yards, 3 yards. And so it's a big difference in how they're playing. Denver is a quality defensive ball club, and you have a second-year quarterback with a very good head coach. So this is a huge game for Denver. This is like an establishment type of game. We're gonna play the champs, and we're gonna go in there and show them that we're capable of playing at this level, because this is a big game for them. For who's more excited about this game, it's going to be Denver. I personally, when this game opened up, I saw 4.5. I tried to get as much as I could. I got a little bit at 4.5, but I got most of it at 4. You can find it. I mean, I'm looking at South Point right now. It's still 4. So it's still out there. I'm going to take Denver plus the 4.
Jim Feist on the Denver Broncos to expose the Philadelphia Eagles in this football contest. Andy, which way are you going here?
I'm sort of undecided. I kind of like Philadelphia because I do believe that they find, they're one of those teams that manages to win, and they don't necessarily care about having the stats. And of course, and we don't know, I wouldn't expect to get much better here, but Saquon Barkley has been certainly contained by opposing teams this year, unlike last year. I am a little concerned with Denver having the game against the Jets next week in London. I would imagine, well, I can't say this because they do have time to, even though they're on the East Coast, they may go back home to Denver for a few days before heading over to London, but they do have that game in London. As far as the Eagles, their upcoming schedule at the Giants, at Minnesota, so I don't know that there's any scheduling edge to either team. And yeah, AJ Brown has been a little bit miffed at why he's not part of the game plan, but again, I think the Eagles are deliberately trying to keep the opposing defense on the field as long as possible, and you do that by running the ball and not going downfield for too many big plays. And you just take a look at Jalen Hurts' passing statistics this year as far as being significantly lower than where they were last year. I was a little bit concerned what I saw about Denver, in that game against Indianapolis in week 2 at Indianapolis when they were on the road, and they gave up all those yards in the game that they ended up losing to when Denver ended up getting the win because Indy got the win because the game-winning field goal by Denver, there was a penalty. The Colts got to retry it and get the win there. So probably won't play the game. If I did do something, I might take a look at teasing Denver up, actually, because I do think it will be a competitive game and it might be a low-scoring game.
And he's going to tease this puppy up if he goes to the football game. Denver Broncos plus more points for his side in the football game. Greg, what do you think happens here? Eagles, Broncos on Sunday.
Well, I'm definitely, besides the look-ahead factor going to London, I'm probably even more concerned with the short week and the West Coast to East Coast trip. But in saying that, as Jim said, Denver is the team that's coming in, and they penciled this on their calendar. This is the biggest game of the season for them.
It
so
is.
I'm not worried too much about all that other stuff maybe being a distraction because they're focused in on the opponent at hand. Jim mentioned this about a week or so ago, and I retorted and came up with some information regarding the Eagles' offensive line. I did some more research. And the bottom line is yes, we can definitely blame Kevin Patullo, the new offensive coordinator. The Eagles' offense has not done anything. Remember last week on this show, we talked about the Tampa Bay game. Matter of fact, even Andy backed me up that game was going to tell us a lot about whether the Eagles were going to use that last come from behind quarter and a half against the Rams. That's going to be the springboard to their passing game. And the Tampa Bay game is going to tell us whether that's true or not for the rest of the season, or it's going to say, well, that was just a quarter. That, they were defending Super Bowl champs that just found a way, and all of a sudden plays just started to happen, and all of a sudden it was just a game or a quarter. Well, the Tampa Bay game told us that it was just a quarter because once again, the offense did nothing the entire game. And what I'm getting to, though, is that whether you want to bring the OC or something else, I think I would zero in on that offensive line. Remember, not only is Lane Johnson banged up. I mean, he's come out of the last 2 games. You've got the fact that Steen has replaced Becton on the offensive line. Becton's a better player. He left. That's already a downgrade to start the season. They lost their Hall of Fame center last year, and that eventually is going to weigh on them. And it is. Juergens is not Kelsey. So you're seeing a banged up offensive line for the Eagles right now and a not as talented offensive line, and they're just going on reputation. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons that the Eagles has not really been able to open up holes for Barkley and have not been able to pass the ball, as well as having a new offensive coordinator. I'll throw that in there as well. But I guess to pick the game, I'd take Denver. Because of the fact that I do think that they're going to be out there for blood, trying to win this game as almighty. And the Eagles are just so lucky at this point that sooner or later it's going to come back to haunt them. I don't know if I'm going to go with the money line. I would just probably be happy enough to take the 3.5 or 4 because the Eagles have been winning games and they've been finding a way to win.
Well, I know one thing, guys. If you were to ask any football fan in Philadelphia, and they're rabid about their play of the Eagles thus far this football season, and you told them that they're undefeated and they're being pushed all around the field, I'm sure they would certainly flip you the bird. They love their football team in Philadelphia. Here's some research that I did on this. It's pretty interesting and a little bit illuminating here. I went back and I looked at Super Bowl winning teams that start the season and were out-yarded in each of their first 2 football games. And you go back and you look at NFL history, those teams through the first 7 weeks of the season, that would be the next 5 games after the first 2, have gone 15-1 outright. There haven't been too many teams that open up the season Super Bowl winners that would get out-yarded in their first 2 games. The Eagles have. So this is a role that Denver is going to go into as Philadelphia looks to be working their way up and improving that 15-1 record, doing just that, improving out that 0-2 in the stats start of the football season. But another interesting stat that I came across, and Jim, I'm sure you know Todd Furman, am I correct?
Oh, yeah, very much. Yeah, he used to, when I owned Don Best, he worked there, and he worked for me there.
Yeah.
Yes. He's really a brilliant guy.
Yes, He is a brilliant guy. I had the pleasure of sitting next to him on the panel of the Stardust when we were previewing the NFL football season, and I was really impressed with him. So anyway, he reports that in the National Football League, he's going back on this first 3 games of this, or I should say in the National Football League season. So far, after the first 4 games, there are 3 teams that have been outplayed, or I should say yards per play, in every one of their football games, the first 4 games. They happen to be Carolina, Tennessee, and Philadelphia. Somehow Philadelphia doesn't seem to fit in that mix with Carolina and Tennessee.
No. No.
But that's what Todd reported. I think it's interesting. They lost the yards per play battle.
That's the one I was going to ask you about. For those teams that are winless in the stats, are they also winless in the yards per play?
Well, that's probably a real good backup to that, Andy. It's more of a confirmation of how bad things are.
Well, because
going.
it takes that into account. If you're outgained in yards, it may very well mean that you scored on special teams or on short fields due to turnovers and things like that. That are yards that you don't have to score offensively to gain points. So if when you actually have the ball and have to take a snap from center from scrimmage, and you actually have to do something with it, if you're able to outgain your opponent on that basis, I would often argue that that's the better football team that happened to win because they benefited from defensive or special teams plays that took away possessions from the offense.
Excellent point.
So here we have Philadelphia have been out yard per played in every one of their football games this season.
That's significant.
Yes, it is. I think it's very significant. Okay. And, stats eventually tell a story or tell a tale. And there's a reason why things happen when you found out what that tale was. And should Philadelphia implode this week, look at their yards per play and see what happens. If they continue to get beat again, then there's a problem going on there.
Yeah. Remember, it was just a couple of years ago when they had that good start to the season, 10-1.
Yeah, 10-1.
And there were a lot of fans that knew that there was a problem, that they weren't playing well. But when you looked at the yardage, it wasn't this bad. They were still outgaining people, and yet the fans could tell that something was off. So how do you think they can tell now? I mean, now I'm sure they're already they're getting flashbacks to a couple of years ago.
What was it that was off back then? Because it started 10-1 and then they collapsed.
I mean, the only thing, because again, remember, that's when they changed both their coordinators, especially on offense, and they wound up firing that guy, even though they started 10-1. So, it's you'd have to definitely go inside and ask an Eagles fan or an analyst that's been a part of every single game and remembers that season. But it is something to keep in mind. Now, the difference is that they've won a Super Bowl now. And so that sort of air of confidence about we'll figure it out, we can win games, that I think does count. I think that should put them in a better frame of mind that we'll figure this out eventually. So I think that's something, because wouldn't you rather, even if, let's say Baltimore was 4-0 right now and had played like they've played, I'd still feel a lot more confident with the Eagles because they've won a championship than I would with the Ravens, who don't know how to win a championship yet with this group.
Andy, do me a favor if you can, and I don't know if you have access to right where you're sitting here right now. Can you look at the Tampa Bay Bucs schedule this year and see how the teams they've played this year have played the game after that?
Yeah, give me a few minutes because I actually do a report on that. I take a look at how teams do straight up, how they do against the spread, and how they do in totals the week after. So you want to know after facing Tampa Bay
this year,
and why facing? What's the reason?
Well, the reason I'm pointing to that is this: is teams that have, when Philadelphia has faced Tampa Bay, the next game they're 0-10 to the spread. That's Philadelphia alone. And I'm just curious as to whether or not that particular trend is continuing in an anti-Tampa format this particular football season. If it is, that Owen trend 10 could be very worthy. If it's not, it's just a trend or a gumball coming out of a gumball machine per se. But
Mark,
they are 0-10
would
after
you
taking
repeat
on Tampa Bay.
Would you repeat what you just said about that 0-10?
Okay. Philadelphia is 0-10 against the spread in the game after they faced Tampa Bay.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'll be curious as to see whether or not Tampa is upholding that end of the ledger this particular football season. There's always invariably some team in football that puts a whipping or a bruise on another opponent, and those opponents do not play well the next week. They went through a physical
Teams
battle.
are 1-2 after playing Tampa Bay straight up and against the spread. Interestingly, teams are 3-0 after playing Philadelphia.
Yeah, so they had a walk in the park.
So far.
Walk in the park statistically against the Eagles, but Tampa Bay gave them a little bit more of a fight. I guess that's perhaps what it would say. Is it tough going up against a team that's won 20 of their last 21 games? Yes, that's what Philadelphia's done. Yeah. They're on this major winning run, and I don't think Nick Sirianni.
By the way, what is their point spread record in those 21 games? Because that's the key thing they were looking at. That they could win this game by 3. Well, they extend the streak, but they don't cover the spread.
It could be a lot like
they started the season off the first half against Dallas, correct? And that was a very high scoring first half, and then they had the lightning and thunder, and they had the delay. In the second half, they hardly scored any. I think they scored 3 points in the total.
Yeah, after halftime. That was before the lightning, but it did happen after halftime.
Then the second game, who did they play?
Kansas City, and they beat them by 3. And I think that they covered that one because I think they were about a 1.
Yeah, and Kansas City was playing poorly at that point. They were just totally out of sync. Not a great effort by either team. Then they played the Rams, who totally outplayed them the entire game. Until the last,
they got the lucky cover with the blocked field goal return.
And then last week they got the kick where they got the early touchdown off the block kick, and then they had fight to stay alive because if Baker doesn't throw that crazy interception into the end zone, they were in position not only cover the game but win the game.
So I think the Eagles are 1-3 against the spread. The only cover being that 20-17 win at Kansas City.
No, they covered last week.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. They covered that. That's right. I was forgetting that the Tampa Bay game.
They're 3-1 to the number this year. Yeah. In fact, during the run they had last year, they covered more tickets, a lot more tickets than they didn't. So, they're winning and covering football games in the spell of this run here. So, the question here is, are they capable? Is Denver capable of handing them a second loss in this run that they're on here, this 21-game run? Can Denver hand them their second loss? I say yes, and I say because of their current state of their play, of what they're doing, their body of work statistically on the playing field. They are not playing well. They're sloppy, yet they're getting away with football games.
They're doing what Tampa Bay has been doing, throughout this year, for the most part, winning close games, small margins.
Yes, and Denver has a really good defense too, and they're really good at the line of scrimmage. And with all of this injury-prone unit that the Eagles are throwing out there on the offensive line, they might be able to take advantage of that as well.
And it starts with the head coach too. I mean, Peyton is a quality head coach.
Yes, he is.
So
especially after game 2.
And he's really good as an underdog too, by the way, guys. As not a surprise, because when you win football games more often than not, and you're an underdog, you probably cash the tickets along the way.
Right.
By the way, Mark, did you want to talk about and Greg, because Greg sent us that article, which was really good, about the line in the Baltimore-Houston game this week, which the advanced line last Tuesday was Baltimore by 10. When they took it off the board and reposted it Sunday after the apparent serious injury to Lamar that would probably keep him out, they reposted it at 3.5, and then there was a steady movement towards Houston to the point where I think at its high point Houston was a 2.5 point road favorite. I don't know if Greg's putting up the screen, and I don't know if that's current right now because it did come back to 1.5 as of last night. So maybe it went up against this morning. And we know about all the issues that Baltimore has had, and I talked about the tough schedule that they've played so far. And I'm wondering if the absence of Lamar in there, I think he's still listed as doubtful unless they've officially said that he's going to be
I
out.
heard he's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks, Andy, is what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah,
So they probably should do what they should have done with Purdy in San Francisco, just put him on the IR and let him miss the 4 games. But nonetheless, I'm just wondering if that adjustment, and of course you can point to Baltimore's defensive issues, but again, look at the offenses they've played, with Buffalo and Detroit, etc. Is that too much of an adjustment or not enough of an adjustment? Because that's a huge adjustment. That's like a Brett Favre in his prime adjustment if he's if he's out. And Cooper Rush has some experience.
That adjustment, Andy, isn't because of Lamar. That's about all the players that they have.
Yeah.
And Greg pointed that out with they've got a ton of people out. And that's the problem.
Yeah, they're ravaged, right?
Yeah, the problem is they're putting the team together with paper clips and glue. I mean, they really. I mean, Greg,
I'm still surprised to see Houston being this big of a favorite.
List of injuries.
Yeah.
Well, here's something interesting, Jim. I think you'd find interesting too. Look at the AFC North this year. The top 2 teams in the AFC North are 0-8 in the stats this year. They haven't won a yardage game, but yet they're the top 2 teams in the AFC North. Pittsburgh. Baltimore.
And the thing with Houston is, another misleading final last week, 26-0 against lousy Tennessee. That was a 6-0 game into the fourth quarter on the strength. I use strength sort of jokingly of 2 first-half field goals. So it's not as though Houston all of a sudden found everything last week, against the worst team in the league.
I'm going to tell you that in my opinion, everybody out there, this is what I'm doing. Find yourself a 41 and bet it under. I don't see these teams scoring. The one thing Houston does have, they have a defense. And Baltimore probably not going to put up a lot of points. And I don't see Stroud and that offensive line putting up a lot. He just said they only had 6 points into the fourth quarter against Tennessee, for God's sake.
I think Derrick Henry could have 25 to 30 carries in this game.
Well, that all helps the under, that's for sure.
Unless he breaks 1 or 2.
He might have to play quarterback too.
And again,
Harbaugh may work that in there.
I'll be talking with Tony at 4:00 today. So if anybody wants to check that out, we'll definitely have a link also to the article he wrote regarding not only all the injuries, but the coaching decisions on both sides of the ball.
And salary cap issues that may not be correctable in the near future.
Yep, that's also something that they're going to have to be dealing with, because remember, we were talking about this the other day, Jim, and that is that all teams are so concerned, and rightfully so, about they get to spend a lot of money on quarterbacks, and it takes up a lot of their salary cap space. Well, what about other positions like the offensive line and things of that nature that helps the quarterbacks? And if you're the Baltimore Ravens, I know they're never going to do this, but if it was me, I'd be like, look, this is not working. So either we have to get a whole new coaching staff, because obviously the front office isn't going anywhere. They've done a really good job for the most part, but we either got to get a whole new coaching staff, or we have to go ahead and let another team give Lamar Jackson $75 million. And let's use that money elsewhere and spend a draft pick and get a quarterback and try to find a quarterback that won't buckle under the pressure in the playoffs. I mean, that's the way I would have to go.
Here's what happens when the media takes over and you want to have stars that you can promote. So who do they promote? The wide receivers, the running backs to a degree, not as much as the wide receivers, and the quarterbacks. Nobody ever promotes a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman. They treat them like they're a dime a dozen, but they're not a dime a dozen. They're actually really critical. The problem here is we're paying too much money. And Doug Krasarian said this in one of his podcasts, or I don't remember, it was a conversation with me, but I'll give him credit for that. They got to learn to stop paying all this money to the quarterbacks and start supporting them with the offensive line. Books have been written about this. This is all media-driven, ownership-driven. Their egos, they want to have the best quarterback and the best wide receivers, and they talk, but they can't talk about the offensive line. Nobody even knows their names, for God's sake. But they are critical.
I'm wondering if some of these organizations will start taking like the baseball model that like the Oakland A's do. You get a guy and he's under that 4 or 5 year contract for the first few years of his career. The quarterback, you develop him. Maybe you get 2-3 good seasons out of him. His value goes up. Then you trade him for draft choices, and you start the process all over again. So you're not spending the huge amount on the second quarterback, but you're developing another one that'll give you 2-3 good years, and then you go on and do that again.
Yeah, but Andy, aren't you always
more
continuously developing, doing that? You're just
but you can be winning at the same time. I mean, we've seen a lot of these quarterbacks, take teams deep into the playoffs in their first 3 to 4 years in the league, which is the goal. And then they require the big contract, and they don't get that second contract. They get it somewhere else.
Now, the NFL is, and I'm not complaining. I love the NFL. I've always loved the NFL. The NFL right now is a B league, B. That's with a boy, a B league. And some of the teams at the bottom, like Tennessee, is really a D minus, like a dog minus.
You don't award Fs, I guess, Jim, huh? No.
Well, I don't want to get. Yeah, I don't want to use F because I might have to use another word, and I don't want to. But its problem is we're not building these teams from the ground up. We're trying to take it from the top down, and it doesn't work that way. You can't take a kid out of college as a number 1 draft choice like Johnny Manziel, and say, okay, now we're going to become, you've got to build the team. It's a grassroots. You got to build it from the ground up, offensive and defensive lines.
Especially offensive lines, because they're protecting the most valuable commodity on the team, and that's the quarterback. So you don't want a rookie coming in there with 3 new offensive linemen.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
What's interesting is they've had all these rules. That was their priority of the NFL the last 10 years is what we're going to do. As we see it even with special teams now, with the whole changing of you can't do onside kicks now unless you tell the other team it's coming, and all these rules to help to make sure that these players are safe. And we've had more injuries than we've ever had. I mean, come on. I mean, you have to look yourself in the mirror at some point and realize that this is not working. But the problem is that if the players are going to go along with this, which is what they would want to because it's their livelihood and they have a very short span of working in the NFL before they retire, they're not going to buckle. It's going to have to be the NFL. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a big league strife between the union and the league. And unfortunately, for us as fans, we don't have a good representative.
Well, take a look at the average size and weight of players today compared to the size and weight and speed of players 40 years ago. The athletes continue to get bigger and stronger. They have much better weight training techniques and other techniques as far as that goes, as far as bodybuilding and maintaining. It just makes this game even more violent than it's ever been, or very hurtful. Injury prone.
We got comments here that we should reply to. I mean,
that's okay. You can't reply to all 6 of them.
No, but there's only 2 guys making, Greg.
That's okay. I'll post one. How about this one, Jim?
That's the one I want to reply to first.
Yeah.
What do we got, guys?
He says he bet Pittsburgh to win the North at +200 last night. I strongly advise people to do that.
Yes.
Because that division is falling apart, and Pittsburgh very well. We know Tomlin can coach.
He's a defensive coach, and he'll figure out those problems.
And Ray has made some nice comments in here too, and thank you, Ray, for those comments. But the Knuckles, whoever Knuckles is, made that +200 bet. I think that's a very wise bet.
Before we end the NFL segment, and look, I like the Rams. They are one of my better picks this week at a much lower number. But why do you think this line has gone so high? And again, I know they've got injuries, but this is the same team that went into, let's say, because I'm pretty positive that just a couple of weeks ago, most of the same players are still playing in the game for the Niners that are playing this week. It's not like they've had like a rash of injuries in the past 2 weeks. These are guys that have been out since week 1 or week 2, except for, Purdy's not playing, so the line's going to go from 4 to 8.5. I mean, is he really that valuable? I don't think so. So why is it 8.5?
The combination of the 2 receivers.
I think
And
Mac
Kittle.
I think Pearson's out, and he's a pretty damn good wide receiver.
Pearsall, yeah.
And Mac is not 100%.
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones.
McCaffrey. Oh, I thought you were about McCaffrey. He was never out.
McCaffrey hasn't been good all season.
He's not 100%.
Yeah, he hasn't been good all year.
And the Rams are not a team that really wins by margins.
I think that to me it's a great under bet. Sometimes I don't like to try to pick the side when you got a big number. I like the Rams, but I'm not going to lay the number in. I like the under.
Jim, before I let you get out of here, I got to ask you one question about pro football. What would you say right now here today is the weakest division in the National Football League? And I'm going to throw this out there with this premise, and then you can answer me just without even me mentioning this stat, okay? But there's a division out there where 3 of the 4 teams have yet to win a yardage game. They're 0-12 in the stats. The only other team in that division has gone 2-2 in the stats. And the only other team in that division that's 2-2 in the stats, you would say right now that you project them to finish last. Who do you think is the worst team or worst division in the National Football League right now?
I'm gonna guess it's the AFC North.
You're exactly right. Cleveland Browns are the premier team statistically,
and I think that's one of the reasons Knuckles made this bet.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. There's just.
Well, I mean, but it's I know they've been down this road before. We saw it last year with not winning the yardage battle and winning games, but it only took them so far. And I get it. There's no Joe Burrow, and the Ravens are off to a bad start. But I don't know how much longer this can go on with the Steelers with winning games like this.
Well, they're phony as hell themselves, Pittsburgh is.
That's what I'm saying.
But they've been winning games for years. He's never had a losing season. He must be doing something right, Tomlin.
Well, so that's the thing is that I think if they win this division, they probably win this division at like 9-8.
He could win at 7-9.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't have to have a winning record.
My Lord. I remember in the beginning of the season, this was one of the top divisions in the league.
Yeah.
This looks to be a dumpster fire.
Yes, it does.
Well, I still would. Where are the Ravens in this?
Unless you're really afraid of the Browns. If you're afraid of the Browns, that's different.
Well, that defense keeps him in most games, but the offense needs him to keep him in the games in most games. We'll find out what happens with Dylan Gabriel. If at least we'll see what happens this week when he goes up against Minnesota. And what's Brian Flores' record, Mark? I think he's like 9-1 against rookie quarterbacks as either the head coach or defensive coordinator.
That could be ugly.
Yeah, he'll throw all kinds of schemes at Gabriel that he's never seen before.
By the way, that game is overseas. It's in London.
Yeah. Second straight week for the Vikings to be playing there. I think that's a huge advantage. Less practice time for the Browns to get Gabriel, totally integrated into the game plan because they're going to be spending so much time preparing and traveling over there and not having a lot of time to do that. I'm actually considering the Vikings, even with Wentz, whose numbers aren't all that bad except for the sacks. But those numbers are pretty similar. Sack numbers are pretty much the same for Cleveland.
When was the last time you saw a 35.5 total?
Well, that's the thing, because the Vikings offensive line is also a mess. And we saw it last week against Pittsburgh, and now Cleveland comes into town. And the Vikings have given up a league-high 18 sacks. And now the Browns and Myles Garrett come into town. So this is – talk about an under. Again, I'm not a total guy, but come on. I mean, I don't know how either of these teams.
We have to have an over and under bet on when the ambulance takes Wentz to the hospital.
He does have Addison back, who got back last week, so that does open things up a little bit for the Vikings as far as that.
Hey, look, if I'm a Browns fan, I'm very excited about the opportunity to see Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
He is an efficient quarterback. He's not a running quarterback, but he's an efficient quarterback. He doesn't throw the deep ball a whole lot, but that's the reason why he was drafted where he was. He's a smaller guy, but he's very, very accurate.
And knows how to win.
They said that in that foursome of quarterbacks in the training camp that they went through, that he was the one quarterback among the 4 that didn't have to be told what to do 2 times.
Yeah.
He gets everything right away. He ingests it, he digests it, and he's wired with it. Very, very intelligent quarterback as well.
Mark, we don't get too many times when we can talk positively about any Cleveland sports team. The
Jim,
Indians.
I'm thrilled that they're not the worst team in the division in the stats. They got 2 stat wins. Nobody else has any. Go Browns.
How about the Indians / Guardians?
All right.
How
That's
about the
another
Cavs
show.
with LeBron?
I mean, they are playing today to win that wild
Series.
card round.
Wild card.
So, Mark, what do you answer Raul's question here?
What was that? Go ahead, Greg. Read
So,
it to me.
which
I don't have my
side
screen.
did you take in the Denver Philly game?
Which side did I
You
take?
took Denver.
I took Denver. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we all took. I think we all.
I took him in a
them.
teaser,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I liked Philadelphia, but
I
the players
I
take the
suggest
points.
trying to get a 4. Don't try to get a 4 if you can. I think it's a good idea to get a 4.
Well, Jim, I know you got to go. I really enjoyed this NFL segment with you. We're going to move on to the college football side of things.
Okay.
And I'm going to wish you nothing but the best of luck this week. Good luck with the pizza show.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was a good show. We did it yesterday. We had Bill Krakenberger on, who's absolutely brilliant, and
Yeah, you
Randy
get along with
McKay.
him really well, Mark.
Randy McKay is an amazingly smart young man.
Where's he? Is he from Montana or
Is that North Dakota?
North Dakota? Okay, it was one of
He
those.
is so smart. Mathematically, he's a genius. I mean, his family, very smart. This young man has won 15 cars in these casino things that they run specials and stuff.
Of the drawings and all that.
He figures them out, and he has won 15 cars.
Sounds like a lot of mathematics.
When does his dealership open?
Yes, right. Jim, I remember him, the short story here, when Circa would run these yearly contests, and they'd have 12 or 24 handicappers in it. And the few times I was in it, Randy McKay was in it. And his one pattern that he always developed, you like to read your opponent's habits, their tells and all that stuff, is he almost always featured these nondescript, what I want to call FCS games. He went into the weird teams that, you would never, ever had a handle on, and he aced them and he murdered it. So, it sounds like he's really a strong mathematical genius.
He's a very, very intelligent young.
And not only that, when he does that, Mark, he's concentrating on games that maybe 5%, if even that, of the wagering public even knows are being played. You always talk about specializing. Now the limits are less in those games, but if you're winning at that high of a percentage, you can compensate for that for what you can't play because you're winning at a higher rate because he has the better information or the better analytics certainly than the bookmakers and certainly than anybody who's betting on the other side.
I would not book his bets. Let me just put it that way.
Well, that's probably the biggest testimony you can give to a person that's in our industry.
Right.
And I won't book your bets, Jim. In fact, I'm going to let you go make bets. Okay.
Okay. You guys take care. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Jimmy, have a great week. Thanks for joining us. That was himself, the legend Jim Feist from Las Vegas, the first half of our Against the Spread podcast. We're going to move on, and I want to remind everybody out there that if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. Ring the bell while you're there. And if you have any comments, please leave them. We'd love to hear from you on the show here. We need to get more subscribers to the show. We've had comments from subscribers that as good of a content as you guys have, you don't have enough subscribers. So anybody that tell them to watch the show and hit the subscribe button. We would really, really appreciate that. Now let's go over to the college football card this particular week. And before we begin there, Andy, anything that you want to call out that maybe people aren't aware of that you've seen happen or witnessed so far in the college football season?
Well, we've started to learn more about some of these teams that we thought were, powerhouses and coming back a little bit. I've not been overly impressed by Texas this year, despite all the hype that came, surrounded them coming into the season. Arch Manning's having a decent year, but I don't think the kind of year that a lot of people projected for him. I wouldn't be shocked, Mark, if they got ambushed at Florida, a very talented team that had not been playing well. They lost, 3 straight games. Maybe the one to South Florida, which was their last home game, was somewhat surprising. The next 2 losses weren't that bad. Florida State was flying really high, and then, of course, they went down into Virginia and ended up losing that game for their first loss after outscoring foes by like 100-something points in their first few games. I'll be curious this week. The game that I'll be interested in is the Vanderbilt-Alabama game. it's very interesting because, and I wrote this one up in my newsletter this week, that that you were replacing Nick Saban, you're replacing a legend, so the bar is very high as far as not even meeting it, but approaching what he did. And they're 4-0. They outscored everybody by 120 points in his first 4 games as head coach last year. That 4th game being the home underdog win over rival Georgia. And the following week, they go down to Vanderbilt laying 23.5 points. And I don't think Vanderbilt trailed at any point in that game. And they pulled that monumental upset. It was the first time Vanderbilt had beat Alabama since 1984. And in 1984, it was the first time they had beaten, that Vanderbilt had beaten Alabama since 1969, a team coached, by the way, by Bear Bryant back in 1969. And now they're returning home, a revenge game, because remember, that was their first loss last year. It ended, they ended up 9-4, including, I think, a bowl win. And that was their worst record since Nick Saban's first year when they went, I think, was it 6-7, I think, in 2007, I believe his first year at Alabama. So he didn't really endear himself to the fans after that loss and the few that followed. Interestingly enough, they were laying 23.5 on the road last year. They're laying 10.5 on the road, basically a little bit less than half as much at home against a team that clearly they have much more talent against. This is probably Vanderbilt's best team in the last 25 years. But I'll be interested to see how competitive this game might be, or might not be.
Is it form for Vanderbilt that wins out here because they are true to their numbers? They're playing it every bit as good as their undefeated record is, or will revenge be a big factor for Alabama? Can they go out and extract that revenge?
I think well, it's a different cover, but I think if they were to lose this game, DeBoer's seat would get very, very hot, very, very quickly.
Very, very quickly. We were going to do the Texas-Florida game. I'm going to scratch that here, guys, and we're going to cover 3 college football games. Greg, did you want to say anything about Texas and Florida before we move on?
Andy's right about that, but we will find out if the running backs who were injured, their top 2 running backs, Baxter and Wisner, they're supposed to return for the game, which is very important because the running game, having 2 really good backs, their top 2 backs out, has hurt the balance of the Texas offense. So I think that's going to be important to find out if that's what was missing from Texas's offense. But yeah, I agree with Andy. It's a game that could definitely go away from Texas, but Texas needs to get going because next week they play Oklahoma, even though there's no John Mateer, but still, I completely agree. Texas has not shown us anything so far this season.
This will also be only their second road game after playing at home several weeks. The previous one was the opening game against the 14-7 loss at Ohio State.
I'll say this one thing about the game before we move on to the 3 games we're going to share with our audience out there is that we all know the hot seat Billy Napier lives on these days, and he would be long gone in the rearview mirror if it wasn't for the buyout contingency in his contract. And the question is, at what point do they eventually eat that, pay him the money, and make a whole new start there? If he loses this game, maybe it happens here. But the one thing you have to keep.
By the way, before you continue, we have seen more coaches fired mid-season, early in the season this year, than I can ever recall.
We sure have. The patience wears thin in the world of college football these days because of all the money they spend. But
the athletes.
The Billy Napier thing is this, guys. As a head coach in conference games, whenever his team has had a losing record 5 times, he's won and covered the spread all 5 times. That's what's going to be his role here against Texas. Now, is there an upset in the making? Billy Napier on the hot seat. We're going to find out real quick about that football game.
By the way, both teams off buys.
Yes.
So no advantage there.
Both teams. But there's one thing maybe I'll wrap it up with just saying, because I got a really great just saying stat here I want to share with everybody. And it involves a pretty good football team that I've been on since the beginning of the season. I know a lot of the college football world, if they haven't, they're on their bandwagon right now because they're hotter than all get out right now. And I'm talking about the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And the thing that I caught doing the newsletter this week is this. Texas Tech, this is what I call a ladder game or a step ladder game. If you look at Texas Tech's body of work this football season here, the points they've scored have gone down every game. The yards they've gained has gone down every game. They started the football season scoring 67, then 52, 45, and 34 points. They gained 698, 591, 552 and 484 yards. So they're stepping backwards each and every game. And now they're going to go into Houston to take on the Houston Cougars, of which, Greg, you and I both are big Willie Fritz fans. Let me ask you, Greg, could this be the first taste of defeat for Texas Tech this season?
I don't think so, because Houston, as much as we've been behind what Fritz has done, and this is his best team, he's only been there a second year. The fact is they haven't played anybody. And they were down late to Oregon State last week. Very fortunate to win that game. And now they
By the way, one of the teams that Texas beat very handily earlier in the year, Oregon State.
Yeah. So this is going to be one of those situations, I think, where it's just going to be a little bit too much competition. Texas Tech Texas Tech hadn't played anybody either, but then they went to Utah and just blew out a quality Utah team on the road, which was very impressive. So I think that means something. And Texas Tech also has something going on. And this is with McGuire as head coach and pre-McGuire, that whenever they're coming off a bye, they are one of the best teams in college football for many years. They're 14-2 against the spread after coming off a week off. So I don't know what they do down there, but whatever they do, they sure get those players ready. And they don't party too much, I guess, on their week offs down at Texas Tech, down at Lubbock. But yeah, I just think it's a step up, too much of a step up in competition for me. It's a lot of points, though. I'll say that.
The other thing is with Texas Tech, I'm not surprised that they show the declines that you talked about. Here's their schedule: the first 3 games at home. Arkansas Pine Bluff, one of the weakest teams in the FCS universe. Kent State, one of the weakest teams in the FBS universe. Oregon State, not nearly as good as we've seen them in the past. And I'm not going to say, look, Oregon State is closer to Kent State than they are to the team Utah that Texas Tech handled pretty easily. So I'm not surprised about that because of the way the schedule is set out. I would have been surprised if they had not taken the pattern, because the quality of competition when they went from Arkansas, Pine Bluff to Kent to Oregon State got a little bit better incrementally each week from the opposition, because they weren't as bad as the team that they played the week before. And then when they went up to Utah and really won that game convincingly, that has me a reason to pause as to, do I really want to go against Texas Tech in this game? I too like Willie Fritz. I too like Houston, but I'm just a little concerned, especially with that time off and the start of conference play. Well, they played Utah, of course, before that, but I think they played conference games the rest of the year. I don't think of any non-conference games. That I think that with that extra time, they've been pointing towards this game, and they, based upon the fact, well, I'll be interested to see if they broke down the film of their game against Oregon State and Houston's game against Oregon State and found.
That's a great point, Andy. You bring out there that look at their strength of schedule here. The first 3 games when they piled all these numbers and all these stats up were against. For arguably, for all intents and purposes, against a junior high school, a high school, and a JUCO college.
Yeah,
played absolutely nobody. Yeah. So they did go to Utah. Very, very impressive wins. We're going to find out whether or not they're for real moving forward.
If they had gone to Utah and won the game 24-21, that would have been a nice win. But what they did up there, they made Utah look like maybe a 3-year JUCO school.
They look like Utah State, right?
And it was also, again, very important, even though it was home and away, it was a similar opponent. And Texas Tech annihilated that similar opponent. And Houston had to struggle to go to overtime with it. So there is that. Oh, and Utah, that was something too that I remember when we went over that week. One of the things that I mentioned on my show was, if you look at Utah, we needed to find out how for real their offense was, because they had brought in a New Mexico offensive coordinator, a New Mexico quarterback, and their first number 1 wide receiver on the team currently at Utah was New Mexico's wide receiver. So would that play, as it did play in non-conference play, would that play in the Big 12? And apparently it does not.
Mark, what would you think about laying or taking the points with Houston in the first half, figuring they're going to get off to a good start and they could probably hold their own with Texas Tech, and we don't know what happens after halftime?
Well, that's a good thought, Andy, because the question is, can they sustain or hold up for a full game against Texas Tech? Or would you be better off, taking advantage of them early on in the football game taking the first half as opposed to the game itself. I don't bet first halves, but I think your point is an excellent point. I think it should be.
First halves and I don't do that either, but I thought a really good first half play was the Memphis FAU game because Memphis was coming off the win against Arkansas and FAU the week off. And sure enough, it was, I think, FAU actually led at half.
I think it was 17-16.
Yeah, something like that. So now again, I still didn't bet it, but I said, hey, if you want to do this, do this. And I feel the same way about the one game that we want to talk about, and that is the Virginia game, because Virginia is coming off the biggest win the program has had, and we don't know how long. And now you just got to wonder, will it take them a little while to get going in the first half? You might just say, you know what? I don't think they're going to get going at all in the game. That it was such a big win that Louisville's a good enough team. It's a road game, and Louisville's going to handle Virginia. They're just not going to be able to come back down to earth, or they will come back down to earth after what happened. So that's the thing to keep an eye on. But I just think,
and by the way, Louisville was a popular play against last week when everybody was on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and the thing, and keep in mind too, if you want to bet that Pittsburgh game, Desmond Reed, who is their best player, Pittsburgh was undefeated, went to West Virginia. Desmond Reed gets hurt early in the game. They blew a 2-score lead against West Virginia, and then they lost the next week against Louisville. So Desmond Reed means a lot to Pittsburgh, and he should be back this week against Boston College, as you mentioned that. But yeah, I mean, this is I think this is the game that tells us, Mark, whether or not Virginia is really an ACC contender or not. Was that just they got their big win, and now they're going to come back down to earth for at least another week or two? Or, hey, are they for real? And they're going to come to play this week and not let the game last week go ahead.
Well, we'll find out. This team hasn't been bowling in 6 years. They appear headed in that direction this football season here. But you've also seen teams start like this that have been there before and completely bottom out going out when they get stopped in games like this. So are you taking
by the way
in that game, Greg?
No, I'm actually going to take. I'm still going to side with Virginia because the one trend that still worked, like it worked last week, is working again, I think. And that is the fact that they have now covered 12 out of 13 as a conference dog of 6 or more. And they did it last week. They won the game outright. We both thought that was a really good play to take the money line at 2-1. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look at that money line again this week and say, you know what? I think Virginia might be able to pull it out again. It's that first half that I'm really concerned about.
If they pull this game out, you might also want to consider Virginia to win the ACC. Here's the reason why. They don't play an underachieving Clemson team. They don't play Miami. Here's who Virginia plays the rest of the way. Non-conference against Washington State, at a struggling North Carolina, at Cal. That might be their most difficult game of the remaining schedule. I like Cal this week against Duke. Wake Forest at home, at Duke, and then home to Virginia Tech, which is all of a sudden getting it together since they made the coaching change. So Virginia's path to the ACC championship game could very well rest on a win at Louisville.
Exactly. So
they've already got the tiebreaker and edge over Florida State.
So is Virginia capable of winning this game, Andy? And will you have your money on the Cavs or the Cards?
I haven't decided yet because I think if I remember when I put it in the newsletter this week, it was in the lean category one way or the other. I probably took Louisville because of their good performance at home, and I'm still not. And also the possible letdown factor with Virginia, as Greg pointed out. I think that's very true because again, it's probably the biggest. I don't know the last time they beat Florida State, but Bobby Bowden was probably the coach.
Well, the one thing I did, guys, is since the inception of overtime in college football, I created a subset of teams that play in overtime games. And there was an interesting pattern that developed in it, and it was really just basically simple. If you lost an overtime game and the next week you played and you were either on the road or you were favored, you struggled to get back up. If you won an overtime game and you come back the next week as an underdog, you continue your momentum. That would be the role for Virginia this particular week because it was a double overtime win over Florida State. That's under the guidelines per se of overtime games and overtime winners and losers coming into this contest here.
Okay. Well, that's.
By the way, I did put Louisville in the playable opinion, so I did say -7 is at the time. -6.5 was reasonable. I just want to see what happened, like for example, with Vanderbilt last year, because they went on to have some success after they pulled the upset on Alabama. Because I think the very next week. Against Alabama, they played. if I get my glasses out here, they played Kentucky plus 12.5, and they beat Kentucky at Kentucky 20-13, and then they won their next game. So Vanderbilt was able to carry over that momentum in a straight up fashion as a road underdog after arguably the biggest win in program history.
Well, I'm going to grab the points with Virginia here, guys, based a little bit on that overtime scenario I just discussed, and the fact that all the good things that they've done here of late have been under Tony Elliott, who's got this program, I feel, headed in the right direction here. Put me down for Virginia plus the points in the football game, and we'll see whether or not they come up flat. I don't think they're going to come up flat, but we're going to find that out. But let's go.
And thanks to the ACC, it looks like that in the next couple of years, we're heading in the right direction with instant replay, because them being able to show us what goes behind the camera and go into the command center on instant replay is something that now I know I think it was one of the summer leagues that first started this, which it usually is. But for the ACC to take, because now I'm watching other games from other leagues, and it'll be instant replay, and I'm going, well, how come I don't know what's going on? Oh shit, it's only the ACC that does it. And so it really, again, I don't know how many people have seen it, but it's just a great way to know that you can actually hear what the officials are saying about the call that you're about to be made on the field.
They're going to have to be very careful about that, because you don't want to hear someone say, "Oh no, it was a good catch. I got him plus 6.5."
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I got the hook in that game.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, let's move it over to another game I think is really intriguing this week, guys. In the Southeast Conference, we're going to look at Texas A&M when they host upstart Mississippi State. The Bulldogs are making a little bit of noise this year, Andy. What do you think about the Bulldogs' chances when they go to College Station?
I don't know that I will play the game. I am considering it, but the side I'm considering is clearly Mississippi State. I mean, they have shown great improvement. Not much was expected of them. And I think, it's Elko's second year at A&M, and I haven't seen much of an improvement, and maybe even a slight decline, especially defensively. So I think that's a very big number. Does A&M have the talent to put a whipping on Mississippi State? Yeah, but Mississippi State is one of those teams like a Vanderbilt, playing with great confidence, off to a good start, and looking at this as a nice challenge for them. So let me see, who are they coming off of in their last game? Mississippi State, was that the Tennessee game? I think the overtime game.
Yeah, the overtime loss against Tennessee.
Yeah. And then let's see. Well, they have a bye after this week before they play at Florida, so they're fully focused for this Mississippi State game. So, my only concern is that this is their second road game of the year. They opened at Southern Miss, who's had a nice little season, but it was the first game under the new coach at Southern Miss. Then they came back, and that weird last-second play against Arizona State at the end of that game at home, Alcorn State, Northern Illinois, and Tennessee last week. So all I can say about Mississippi State is they are improved after their 2-10 season last year. After this, the program had gone down 9-4, 5-7, 2-10. They're clearly improved over that. Are they improved enough to beat A&M? I'm not quite sure, but they don't have to beat A&M. They only have to come in under a little bit over 2 touchdowns.
Greg, what do you think here? Bulldogs.
I'm surprised that this line keeps getting bigger. I don't know why. I thought where it was at 13 was okay. Now it's 15.5. I don't get it. Unless somebody knows something, somebody has some sort of little birdie at Mississippi State and they're playing around or something. I don't know. But look, Mississippi State has covered all 4 games this year, while Texas A&M is 1-3 against the spread. Throw in the fact that under Jeff Lebby, Mississippi State is 4-1 against the spread as a road dog, and under Elko, Texas A&M is 3-11 against the spread as a favorite. So all of that is telling me to jump on Mississippi State, take 15, 16, whatever you want to take. I think the only way that this is going to look, if Mississippi State I actually won the game last week, I'd feel a little bit more like, well, maybe they'll have a kind of rebound effect here, but they didn't win the game. So I think they're going to be completely motivated to show everybody that they're still a quality team, and they still should be remembered as a team that didn't really because remember, Mississippi State, a lot of people already think that this has been a bad program, when in fact it hasn't. It had one bad year. This was still a bowl team every year, but before last year. And it's just
they hadn't recovered since the untimely passing of Mike Leach.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That was after the 2022 season, I believe.
Yeah, that's the thing that really put him down for a couple of years. But other than that, this has been a winning program, and I think they're going to go back to winning again. And I think Jeff Levy's done a really good job so far.
I agree with that. I see a really vast.
By the way, I just want to point out before you go, I just want to point out Mississippi State has a bye next week before heading to Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Georgia. A&M schedule, they they play Florida at home next week. Then they're at Arkansas, LSU, and Missouri. So tough games coming up for both. In fact, they both play Florida next. Only that Mississippi State has a week off, so they can be fully focused on A&M, where A&M might be spending part of their time. It's Mississippi State, and we're hosting Florida. Maybe they're putting in a few things for Florida, while Mississippi State's just looking at A&M this week.
What I'm looking at here, guys, in this Mississippi State football team is maybe too much of the obvious. And, the saying, beware of the obvious, always beware of the obvious. But I'm enamored with what this football program is doing this football season here. You take a look, just do comparative numbers this year, last year. Offense up 8 points a game, up 54 yards a game, and defense up 153 yards a game. I don't know who's the defensive coordinator there or who's taken over here, but other than that overtime loss to Tennessee, they play some pretty staunch defense. That was the only stat loss they've had thus far this football season here. And I'm like you, Andy. I think it was you or I can't remember, you or Greg mentioned about Elko. I don't think he's really delivered the package that they signed him up for. He come in and had some pretty big shoes to fill here, but disappointing shoes. He took over for Jimbo Fisher, who the reason they let him go is because they don't feel that he delivered the goods.
Elko is following the same path, although it's only early in his second season.
Exactly right.
I think even though I'm taking Mississippi State to cover the game, I still think so far, and I think last week was definitely not what you wanted to see. I mean, they struggled to hold on to beat a team that they just shut down in Auburn. That game should have been a blowout, not a one-score game in the fourth quarter. But so far, this Texas A&M team has delivered. It's a short sample size, but going into Notre Dame and beating Notre Dame was a monumental victory for the program. But
beat them twice in 2 years.
Yeah, can they keep this going? That's the trick. And last week was disappointing. So hey, if Mississippi State pulls off the upset, and I don't even think that's strange to think of, considering how poorly Texas A&M played last week against Auburn, even though Auburn has a much better defense. Then I think that we can talk more about, things aren't really going Mike Elko's way. But so far, I think we have to give him a little credit for what he's done this season.
He's been impressive to the extent that he caught Notre Dame after Notre Dame had lost at Miami and had 2 weeks to prepare for A&M, whereas A&M was coming off a couple of easy games, but they did not have any bye week to prepare for Notre Dame, and Notre Dame was playing that game to avenge last year's loss. So, yeah, I give Elko a lot of credit for that start to the season.
My concern about the Aggies is they've been a good dog. The only time they were a dog, they won outright at Notre Dame. They've been favored 3 times this year. They burned the money all three times as a favorite. And you're laying a pretty healthy number here to a team I think that's on the come right now. So you can put me down for Mississippi State in this game. And guys, let's wrap this up with our featured game of the week. And we got a beauty on tap here this week. Why not? All eyes will be on this rivalry matchup when Miami of Florida travels to Florida State on Saturday. Greg, what do you think happens here? Hurricanes, Seminoles.
I'm actually, even though I liked Virginia last week against Florida State, that had a lot more to do with Virginia than Florida State and the matchup and the timing. So it wasn't like I was not like I thought, well, Florida State's a fraud. No, it had nothing to do with that. And I say that because I like Florida State this week. I think that, I think part of it was looking ahead to this game. I think that probably hurt them. So, I think it's interesting that everybody was wondering about Mike Norvell's job security, and then he comes out and he wins the big one against Alabama, and that quiets everybody for about a month, about a few weeks. And then, of course, last week they lose to Virginia, and now everybody's wondering, when are they getting rid of this guy again? So I think this is going to continue for them all season long, especially if they lose on Saturday. But I actually like them. I think Miami has had some big wins so far this year, but I'm not so sure Miami is the type of team capable of keep winning big games. I think sooner or later they're going to lose one of these games, and I think this is a perfect setup for them to lose this game. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. This is going to be the best matchup, I think, that we've seen of both of these teams at this level in a while, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think every point matters, which is why taking 4.5, 5 points, I think that's I'm very grateful to be able to take that much.
Andy, what do you think of this rivalry football matchup? Dog or favorite?
I like the schedule that Miami has faced so far. Of course, they've all been at home, and that's one of the concerns here. Notre Dame, nice win. Bethune-Cookman, take nothing out of that, slaughtered. South Florida, well, they got a South Florida. I think South Florida, if I remember, weren't they coming off the upset of Miami?
Two
Miami
upsets, Boise State.
Boise State and Florida, I believe.
Yeah,
they were coming off. And then, of course, Miami beat Florida 2 weeks ago. They do have a bye. They did have a bye before this game at Florida State. It's been an interesting series, and Mark, you probably have all the numbers, but I think it's been sort of like either home or road dominated the last few years as far as the winner goes. And of course, last year Miami beat a downtrodden Florida State that they were still, I think, feeling the after effects of that perfect season. That wasn't last year. That was a couple of years ago. No, it was last year, the undefeated season 2023, where they didn't get invited into the playoff. Florida State's win against Alabama is looking a lot better the way Alabama has played since then, especially with that win Alabama had at Georgia last week. East Texas A&M and Kent State, not much. And then in their first trip on the road to Virginia, they got more of an effort, more of a battle than they thought. And of course, they lost that game, trailing most of the way. But a lot of people were on Virginia last week, so maybe that wasn't a surprise. And maybe they knew more about Virginia than a lot of people who just looked at Florida State. I kind of like Miami. I think that Cristobal has been justifiably criticized throughout his coaching career, but I think he's got such a great talent and such good numbers this year. I probably won't play the game before it kicks off, but I might find some spots during the game after I watch, say, the first 8 to 10 minutes that may give me some idea as to which team may be a little bit better prepared for the opponent and get involved there. But I do lean Miami. Just because, again, I think they faced overall. They overall faced, I think, a better set of competition, although at home, Florida State has the most impressive win of the two teams over Alabama.
Well, when I look at this matchup, guys, this reminds me of kind of like the old rivalry games in college football. You can always count on them there. They were always there every year. You had rest, you had revenge, you had look-aheads, letdowns, everything like that. All the ingredients for a real, real good rivalry handicap. And I think it fits into this game here as well. You take a look at what was mentioned here earlier about the series itself. The underdog has cashed 8 of the last 10 times in the series. And what you have for as far as a setup goes, and I love setting games up. In fact, in my schedule, each and every week, I will handwrite what every team came off of, whether it's a win, a loss, a cover, and then compare them, just like in our stat logs in our midweek newsletters, because you can get a running handle on which teams are coming off a high or off a low and so forth and whatnot. You've got the perfect setup here in this game here to Florida State coming off a loss, no cover, Miami and Florida off the win and cover in their last football game here. I'm going to grab the points here. And the thing I don't like about Miami this week is they have coming off with the week of rest. And I've seen so many times before in the past that these football teams that open up 4-0 or better take a week of rest and come back after that. That rest turns to rust and almost ruins a season. You have a 5-0, what I call fat cat here in Miami of Florida. And that's explained in our Smart Box in this week's Playbook newsletter. 5-0 fat cats and what they're all about. That's what Miami is here, a 5-0 fat cat laying points into a rivalry here, a rivalry situation here. Give me the points with Florida State.
By the way, Mark, have you looked at anything in that stat that you just mentioned about teams coming off the fat cats when they are playing in a rivalry game, and in which their undefeated season is on the line and the opponent's undefeated season just ended?
That's a great point because oftentimes more than not, you involve what we call bubble bursts when a perfect season has been ruined. And the classic case in point is the same thing it is in a 5-0 Fat Cat. And what it
Yeah.
basically is when you've had a perfect season ruined and you come favored the next game, good luck getting that football team up. You come an underdog the next game, it's sort of a Rodney Dangerfield slap in the face roll. The
Yeah.
same thing for 5-0 teams. When they're 5-0, they're favored. It's very, very difficult to overcome. 5-0 dogs are really rather strong plays. Now, we don't have that in Florida State, obviously, with the loss. But look on the card here this week. We've got a couple of 5-0 dogs in the football card this week.
Yeah.
Take a long look at those football teams because I think you're going to like what you see.
Absolutely.
Hey, is one of them my
But I
boys
honestly didn't
at
know what the
Vanderbilt?
result was going to be.
Is one of those my boys at Vanderbilt?
Yes, it is.
All right, I like to hear that.
Yep. Yes, it is. That's one of the reasons when we were doing the write-up here. The first thing that you knee-jerk to a game is the nasty revenge that's involved in the football game. Then you got to fade a 5-0 Fat Cat dog, and I don't want to have to do that, especially one that's playing really well. There's nothing phony about what Vanderbilt's doing this year or did last year.
See, that's why I was confused because in the playbook, you actually pointed that out as the power play for Alabama this week.
Well, but we didn't know when we did the power play in the
Right.
in the magazine that Vanderbilt would be a
It would be
5-0
5-0 team. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's all, how they come
And
into
now
this
coming in as an
particular
underdog. Yeah.
football game. Exactly right. And that was all
And
done.
I think that explains what my point was before. Why the line is less than half of why the line favoring Alabama is less than half of what the line was last year when they were favored by more than twice that on the road.
Yeah, the perception about Alabama and Vanderbilt obviously on the come right now, and I think being accepted as a legitimate football team in the Southeast Conference. The other side of the equation here is when you're taking a look at that Alabama game, Southeast Conference dogs have done really, really well this year. That's another factor you might want to sprinkle on the Vanderbilt pie this week, Greg, is they
Let
are.
me ask you one other question, Mark, that you may have information on because it's happened so frequently. I alluded to it earlier. How have teams historically done the first game after the coach is fired? We saw it work with Virginia Tech. Baylor covered last week after Gundy was fired, even though they lost the game. I think I forget who did it. I think UCLA playing their first game against Northwestern after the coach was fired 2 weeks earlier when they lost to New Mexico. So I think that was it. And now, of course, Sam Pittman being let go by Arkansas. And I think Arkansas is off this week.
The answer to that question is really kind of subjective because a lot depends upon the condition of the team. When the coach left it, were they a good team? Were they a bad team? Were they a struggling team?
Did they like the coach or not like the coach?
Yes, exactly right. There could be a wall-like coach who was let go, and the fans could be furious. Now, will they sulk or will they go and win one for the Gipper in that sense? Oklahoma State playing very, very poor football. When they let Mike Gundy go, you had to wonder whether or not they're going to want to play one for the Gipper. But
they still lost by 18, but they covered 20.5.
There you go. They got the ticket.
Oklahoma State. So they still continued played poorly, but they exceeded what those poor expectations were by a couple of points. So
exactly,
the point's well taken.
Well, guys, we could talk about the college football card up until the games begin on Saturday. But
we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in at 2:30.
Yeah, you and I, Greg, are going to get together tomorrow, and we'll review the football card as we usually do every Friday on the ProLine TV network. Tune into that. A lot of good sight in the handicapping, and Greg always has a nice dog or two that I've got my pencil ready to find out exactly who that's going to be.
Yeah, we hit two of them last week, both
Very
you
nice.
and I. We had Virginia, and I forget who the other one was. But yeah, we hit 2-2-1 money lines last week, so we'll try to do
Illinois,
that again
maybe
on Friday.
Maybe Illinois against USC.
Yes, I think Mark, you had Illinois, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Winning that game, yep. And I had Hawaii, so I know I had that one. But yeah, you had that one. You had Illinois.
By the way,
surprise, USC didn't cover as a road favorite.
Mark, what about the game this week with Air Force and Navy? The big rivalry, and I know it's a big number, but that loss to Hawaii, it could have been look ahead, but Hawaii was playing like a 6th straight week, and they were playing in altitude, and they led that game against Air Force wire to wire.
Now, I think that speaks for itself, Andy. It tells you exactly what Air Force is all about. They had a rotten season last year. They kind of did Oklahoma State and disappeared from what they were. And the reason I'm saying that is they had ranked in the top 10 in defenses the last 5 years in a row. Up until last football season when they stunk the joint up, and they're stinking the joint up again this year.
Yep.
So there's something not right in the state of Denmark, or in this case, I should say, in the city of Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Yes, with that Air Force team. So it's kind of a tough call for me. if this game would have got to 20, maybe minus 20, I'd be telling you all about how
That's a little too high. Yeah, I think actually
Troy
maybe.
Calhoun's been here 19 years. Maybe it's wearing a little thin.
It may be.
Yeah.
The only one who seems to survive like this, coach till he's like 90, is Kirk Ferentz.
Yep, he's still doing it. And he's always in the mix in every football game he plays. He always gets my attention whenever he does
8 to 10 wins a year, like clockwork, virtually.
Yeah. I'm just glad his son is no longer the offensive coordinator of that program.
Yeah, he was pretty offensive, wasn't he?
That was ridiculous. Well, guys, let me get out of here. I'm going to thank you very much for your time. It was a great show here today with Jim Feist from Las Vegas joining us in the first half talking pro football, Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com in Las Vegas, and our producer extraordinaire, Greg DePalma, for the group. Once again, this is Marc Lawrence reminding you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.